She married a monster, but the real nightmare was waiting at home. 20-year-old Ilara Voss just became Mrs. Dominic Hale, wife to a man the city whispers about in fear. Everyone knows what happens on wedding nights. Everyone knows what men like him do to girls like her. But when he sees what her father did, the scars carved into her back like a roadmap of pain, everything stops. The monster she married? He steps back. And the real story? It's just beginning. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The dress weighed 40 pounds. Ilara knew because she'd asked the seamstress, who'd laughed like it was a compliment. French lace, hand-beaded bodice, a train that required 3 assistants to arrange. It cost more than most people earned in a year. Her father made sure she knew that too. "Stand straight," he'd said that morning, his hand on her shoulder, tight enough to leave marks under the silk. "You represent this family now. Don't embarrass me." She hadn't answered, hadn't nodded, just kept her eyes on the mirror while they pinned her hair and painted her face until she looked like someone else entirely. Someone beautiful. Someone wanted. Someone who wasn't about to be sold. The church had been full. She remembered that in fragments, faces she didn't know, flowers she hadn't chosen, music that sounded like a funeral march dressed up in major chords. Her father walked her down the aisle with his chin high, playing the proud patriarch, his grip on her arm just shy of painful. "Smile," he whispered. "You're a bride, not a prisoner." She smiled. At the altar stood Dominic Hale. She'd seen him twice before. Once at the signing, her father's study, whiskey and contract negotiations, her sitting in the corner like furniture. Once at the engagement dinner, where he'd barely looked at her, speaking only to confirm she understood the arrangement. Both times she'd kept her eyes down, her answers short. "Yes, sir." "No, sir." "I understand, sir." He was 43. Tall, broad-shouldered, with gray threading through dark hair, and a face that looked carved rather than born. People said he built his empire on ruthlessness, that he crushed competitors like insects, that women threw themselves at him, and he discarded them just as easily. People said a lot of things. He didn't smile during the ceremony, didn't stumble over his vows. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," he'd pressed his lips to hers for exactly 3 seconds. Clinical, perfunctory, cold. The reception blurred together. Champagne she didn't drink, toasts she didn't hear. Her father's friends clapping Dominic on the back, making jokes about wedding nights and young brides, their laughter rolling over her like waves. She sat at the head table in her 40-pound dress and smiled until her face ached. Dominic sat beside her, silent. He didn't touch her, didn't speak to her, just watched the room with eyes that missed nothing. At 11, he stood. "We're leaving." Not a question. She followed. The car ride to his house, mansion, really, all glass and steel and too many rooms, took 20 minutes. He sat on one side, she on the other, with enough space between them for another person. The driver didn't make small talk. The silence pressed down like a physical thing. Her hands shook. She folded them in her lap, squeezing until her knuckles went white. This was it. The part everyone warned her about. The part her mother had prepared her for with tight-lipped instructions and averted eyes. The part her father's friends had referenced with knowing smirks. She'd been trained for this like a soldier trained for war. Lie still. Don't fight. Wait for it to be over. She could do that. She'd survived worse. The house loomed ahead, all lit windows and sharp angles. Beautiful in a way that felt aggressive. When the car stopped, Dominic got out without waiting, already walking toward the entrance. She gathered her train and followed, her heels clicking on the stone driveway. Inside, the foyer stretched 2 stories high, all marble and minimalism. A woman in her 50s appeared, housekeeper, Ilara guessed, but Dominic waved her off with a single gesture. "Upstairs," he said, to Ilara. Her heart hammered. The stairs seemed endless. Her dress caught twice. She had to stop and free it, her fingers clumsy with nerves. He didn't slow down, didn't look back, just kept walking until he reached a door at the end of the hall and pushed it open. The bedroom. Of course it was the bedroom. It was massive, king bed, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that probably cost more than her childhood home. Everything in shades of gray and black and white. Sterile, impersonal, He closed the door behind them. Ilara's breath caught. "Turn around," he said. She turned, facing away from him, her eyes fixed on the window. Her reflection stared back, pale, painted, terrified. She heard him move behind her, footsteps on hardwood, and then his hands were at her back, finding the first button of the dress. She stopped breathing entirely. 1 button. 2. 3. The dress was a fortress of fastenings, dozens of tiny silk-covered buttons running from neck to waist. His fingers worked methodically, not rough, but not gentle either, just efficient. 4, 5, 6. "I can do it," she whispered. "I can stand still." She did. 7, 8. The fabric loosened, peeling away from her shoulders. Cool air hit her skin. She'd worn nothing underneath, her mother's instructions, delivered with a grimace, and now the dress was gaping, slipping, about to fall entirely. 10, 11, 12. And then he stopped. Just stopped. The silence stretched so long she thought maybe she'd imagined it. Maybe he was still working, still unbuttoning, still moving toward the inevitable. But when she risked a glance at the window's reflection, he was standing perfectly still, staring at her back, at the scars. She'd forgotten. In all the fear and preparation and dread, she'd somehow forgotten that he'd see, that anyone would see. They'd been hers alone for so long, raised lines crisscrossing her shoulder blades, some thin as wire, others thick as rope, layered over years like rings in a tree. Her father's work. His belt, mostly, sometimes his hands. Once, memorably, a riding crop he'd bought specifically for the purpose. "What?" Dominic's voice came out rough. He cleared his throat. Tried again. "What is this?" "Nothing," she said automatically. The answer she'd been taught. "It's nothing." "That's not nothing. I fell. When I was younger, Don't lie to me." The command cracked through the room. She flinched, shoulders hunching, waiting for the blow that always followed that tone. But nothing came, just his breathing, sharp and controlled, behind her. "Who did this?" Each word came out separate, distinct, like he was holding something back with effort. She couldn't answer, couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up entirely. "Ilara." He moved around to face her, and she instinctively stepped back, clutching the dress to her chest. His eyes were different now, not cold, not distant, something else, something almost like fury, but not directed at her. "Who did this to you?" "It doesn't matter. It matters." "No." She shook her head, taking another step back. "No, it doesn't. It's done. I'm fine. I'm here. I can... Whatever you want, I can..." She was babbling. She knew she was babbling, but the panic had taken root, spreading through her chest like ice, because this wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to use her and ignore her and maybe, if she was lucky, forget about her. He wasn't supposed to stop. Wasn't supposed to ask questions. Wasn't supposed to look at her like that. "Stop," he said quietly. "Just stop." She stopped. He stared at her for a long moment, something working in his jaw. Then he turned, walked to a dresser, and pulled out a t-shirt. Plain, black, enormous. He tossed it to her. "Put that on." She caught it reflexively, confused. "What?" "Put it on," he repeated. "And take off that dress. You look like you can't breathe." He was right. The boning dug into her ribs, the weight pulled at her shoulders. The whole thing felt like a trap. But she didn't move, didn't understand what was happening. "I'm not going to watch," he said, something almost like exasperation creeping into his voice. "I'm going downstairs. Change. There's a bathroom through there if you need it." He nodded toward a door she hadn't noticed. "When you're done, come down. Kitchen's on the first floor, left side. We're going to talk." "Talk?" "Yes, talk. People do it. Use words, exchange information." He was already heading for the door. "Don't take too long." And then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving her standing there in a half-unbuttoned wedding dress, holding a t-shirt that smelled like expensive detergent and something else, cologne maybe, or just him. She didn't move for a full minute. Then, slowly, she let the dress fall. The kitchen was nothing like the rest of the house. Where everything else was sharp edges and cold surfaces, this room felt almost human. Warm wood cabinets, granite countertops worn smooth in spots, actual plants growing in pots by the window. It looked used, lived in. Dominic stood at the counter pouring whiskey into 2 glasses. He'd taken off his jacket and tie, rolled up his sleeves. Without the wedding armor, he looked less like a villain from her father's warnings and more like just a man. Tired, maybe. Older than his years. "Sit," he said, nodding to the bar stools. She sat, drowning in his t-shirt. It hit her mid-thigh, the sleeves past her elbows. She'd washed her face in the bathroom, scrubbed off the makeup until her skin felt raw. Found her hair still pinned in its elaborate updo and pulled out every pin until it fell around her shoulders in waves. Without the paint and styling, she looked young, felt younger. He slid a glass toward her. "Drink." "I don't, You do tonight." She picked it up, took a small sip. It burned going down, settled warm in her stomach. Not unpleasant. He leaned against the counter across from her, his own glass in hand. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Not the way men usually looked at her, not cataloging parts or calculating value. Just looking, like he was trying to solve a problem written in a language he didn't speak. "How long?" he finally asked. "How long what? How long has someone been hurting you?" The question landed like a punch. She took another sip of whiskey to buy time, to think of an answer that wouldn't crack open everything she'd spent years keeping sealed. "I don't know what you mean." "Elara." He said her name like a warning. "I've seen a lot of things in my life. Done things I'm not proud of. Hurt people who probably deserved it, and some who didn't. But those scars on your back?" He shook his head. "That's not one incident. That's not a fall or an accident or bad luck. That's systematic. That's years." She stared at her glass. "Why do you care?" "Because you're my wife now." "Exactly. I'm your wife, your property, bought and paid for." The bitterness leaked through despite her best efforts. "So why does it matter what happened before?" His jaw tightened. "Is that what you think this is? A transaction? Isn't it?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Your father sold you to pay off his debts. $2 million plus the business merger. I get a wife, he gets financial backing and political connections. Clean deal. Everyone wins." He paused. "Except you." She had nothing to say to that. "I've made a lot of deals in my life," he continued. "Bought companies, sold assets, traded favors, but I've never bought a person before. Never wanted to." He drained his glass, set it down with a sharp click. "Your father made it very clear what the arrangement was. A marriage in name, a merger in practice. You were part of the package." "I know." "Did you agree to it?" She almost laughed. "Does it matter?" "Yes." The certainty in his voice startled her. She looked up, met his eyes. They were dark, unreadable, but something in them made her tell the truth. "No," she said quietly. "I didn't agree, but I didn't refuse either. That's not how it works in my family." "How does it work?" "You do what you're told. You don't argue. You don't complain." She traced the rim of her glass with one finger. "You survive." "By letting him beat you." It wasn't a question. She didn't answer. "Was it just him?" Dominic asked. "Or were there others?" "Why are you asking me this?" "Because I need to know what I'm dealing with." "You're not dealing with anything," she said, and heard the edge creep into her voice. "I'm dealing with it. I've been dealing with it my whole life. You don't need to know anything except that I'll do whatever you want, whenever you want it, and I won't cause problems. That's what you bought, right? A quiet, obedient wife who knows her place?" He stared at her. "Is that what you think I want? Isn't it?" "No." The word hung between them. "Then what do you want?" she asked. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I don't know yet." Somehow that was worse than any answer he could have given. "Here's what's going to happen," he said finally. "You're going to stay here, in this house. You'll have your own room. There's a suite down the hall from mine. You'll have privacy. Freedom to move around, go where you want within reason. I'm not going to lock you up." "Okay." "I'm also not going to touch you." She blinked. "What?" "I'm not going to force myself on you," he said bluntly. "Not tonight, not any night. Whatever you've been told about what husbands do to wives, whatever you've been prepared for, forget it. That's not happening." She didn't believe him, couldn't believe him. Men didn't marry 20-year-old girls and then not use them. That wasn't how the world worked. "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Because I'm not a rapist. He said it flatly, like stating a fact. And because you're terrified of me. I'm not, don't lie. You've been scared since you walked into that church. Maybe before. He refilled his glass, didn't offer her more. I don't want that. Don't want someone who flinches when I move too fast or says yes because they're afraid of what happens if they say no. Then why marry me at all? Your father's business was going under. He needed capital, needed connections. He stopped. I had my reasons. What reasons? None of your concern right now. The dismissal stung more than it should have. She looked away, back at her whiskey, feeling stupid. Of course he had reasons. Of course this was about something bigger than her. Everything was always about something bigger than her. I'm sorry, she said automatically. For what? For asking. I shouldn't have. Stop apologizing. She stopped, the words dying in her throat. You're going to do that a lot, aren't you? He sounded tired. Apologize for existing, for speaking, for taking up space. She wanted to apologize for that too, but caught herself. Let me make something clear, Dominic said. I don't know what kind of husband you expected. Maybe you thought I'd beat you like your father did. Maybe you thought I'd use you and ignore you. Maybe you had no expectations at all. He set his glass down. But here's what I am. I'm a businessman. I keep my word. When I make a deal, I honor it. And the deal I made was marriage, not ownership. They're the same thing, she said quietly. Legally. Legally, yes. In practice? He shook his head. We'll figure it out. She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what any of this meant. The whiskey was making her head fuzzy, her thoughts slow and tangled. It's late, Dominic said, apparently coming to the same conclusion. I'll show you your room. He led her back upstairs, past the bedroom they'd started in, to another door at the opposite end of the hall. When he opened it, she saw a space almost as large as his. A four-poster bed with crisp white linens, a sitting area with a couch and chairs, windows overlooking the grounds. A door led to what she assumed was a private bathroom. This is yours, he said. No one comes in without your permission. Not the housekeeper, not me. There's a lock on the inside if you want to use it. She stepped inside, turned to face him. He stood in the doorway, not crossing the threshold. Why are you being nice to me? The question came out smaller than she intended. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or sadness. This isn't nice, Ilara. This is basic human decency. The fact that you can't tell the difference says everything I need to know about your father. He turned to go, then paused. One more thing, he said without looking back. Tomorrow we're going to sit down and talk, really talk, about what happened to you, about who did it, about what you want going forward, and you're going to tell me the truth, all of it. And if I don't, then we'll sit there until you do. He glanced over his shoulder. I'm very patient when I need to be. He left, pulling the door closed behind him. She heard his footsteps retreat down the hall, heard another door open and close. Then silence. She stood in the middle of her new room, her room, he'd said, with a lock, and tried to process everything that had just happened. The wedding night that wasn't. The questions that shouldn't have been asked. The promise of safety from a man she'd been taught to fear. None of it made sense. She crossed to the bed, pulled back the covers, climbed in still wearing his t-shirt. The sheets smelled like lavender and something else, clean and fresh and nothing like home. She stared at the ceiling, waiting for footsteps, for the door to open, for the real night to begin. But the house stayed quiet. Eventually, after what felt like hours, she fell asleep. She woke to sunlight and panic. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, everything wrong. Then it came back in a rush. The wedding, the house, Dominic, the scars. She sat up fast, heart racing, and checked the door. Still closed, still locked from the inside, though she didn't remember locking it. Maybe she had. Maybe some survival instinct had kicked in while she slept. A clock on the nightstand read 9:47. Late. Too late. She should have been up hours ago. Should have what? She didn't even know what was expected of her here. She found her wedding dress from last night draped over a chair. Someone must have brought it in while she slept, which meant the lock was useless, which meant, stop, breathe. She forced herself to slow down, to think. A bathroom door stood ajar across the room. She went in, found it stocked with everything she could need: towels, toiletries, a robe hanging on the back of the door. The shower was one of those rainfall ones, all glass and chrome in at least 6 different settings. She showered fast, scrubbing until her skin hurt, trying to wash off the previous day. When she got out, she found clothes laid out on the bed that definitely hadn't been there before. Jeans, a soft sweater, undergarments still in packaging, all in her size. Someone had been in the room while she showered. Her hands shook as she dressed. The clothes fit perfectly, which somehow made it worse. How long had they been planning this? How much did Dominic know about her before they'd even met? She found her way downstairs using memory and guesswork. The house felt different in daylight, less imposing, more empty. Her footsteps echoed on the hardwood. The kitchen was exactly where he'd said. She found coffee made, a plate of pastries covered in plastic wrap, a note in sharp handwriting. "Eat something. I'll be in my office when you're ready to talk." No signature, like he assumed she'd know who it was from. She poured coffee, took one of the pastries, flaky, buttery, probably expensive, and ate standing at the counter. The house was so quiet she could hear herself chew. "Mrs. Hale?" She spun, nearly dropping her mug. The woman from last night, the housekeeper, stood in the doorway looking apologetic. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. I'm Margaret. I manage the house." "Oh. Hello." Alara set down the mug carefully. I know who you are." Margaret smiled, warm and genuine. "Welcome. If you need anything at all, just ask. That's what I'm here for." "Thank you." Margaret hesitated. "Mr. Hale asked me to let you know he's in his office, first floor, west wing. Just follow the hall past the library." Of course there was a library. "He also said you should take your time. No rush." Alara nodded, not trusting her voice. Margaret left, and the silence crashed back in. She finished her coffee slowly, delaying the inevitable. Then she rinsed the mug, habit, her mother's training, and went to find his office. The west wing was lined with windows overlooking formal gardens. She glimpsed a pool, a tennis court, paths winding through manicured hedges. The kind of grounds that required a full-time staff to maintain. The office door was cracked open. She knocked anyway. "Come in." He sat behind a massive desk covered in papers, laptop open, phone to his ear. He held up one finger. "Wait." And she stood in the doorway feeling awkward and out of place. "I don't care what the legal team says," he was saying into the phone. "Tell them to find a way or find new jobs. I want this done by Friday." A pause. "No? No extensions. Friday or it doesn't happen." He hung up without saying goodbye, looked up at her. "Close the door." She did, then stood there, uncertain. "Sit." He nodded to one of the chairs across from his desk. The chairs were leather, expensive, comfortable. She perched on the edge of one, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Perfect posture. Her mother's lessons. Dominic watched her for a moment, then closed his laptop and leaned back. "Did you sleep?" "Yes." "Eat?" "Yes." "Good." He pulled open a drawer, took out a legal pad and pen. "Now we talk." Her stomach dropped. "About what?" "Everything." He clicked the pen. "Start with your father." What do you want to know?" "When did he start hitting you?" The question was so direct it knocked the breath out of her. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't remember," she finally said. "I was young." "How young?" 6, 7, maybe younger. It's hard to... The memories all blur together. He wrote something down. "And your mother? What about her? Did she know?" Alara almost laughed. Of course she knew. Everyone knew. They just didn't care. "Did she try to stop it?" "Once. When I was 9. He broke her arm." The memory came up sharp and clear. Her mother's scream, the crack of bone, the way she'd never tried to intervene again. After that, she just looked away. "Siblings?" "No, just me." "Lucky you," he muttered, writing more notes. "The scars on your back. When was the last time he did that?" 2 weeks ago. His pen stopped. 2 weeks. He was angry about the wedding, about having to sell me to fix his mistakes. She recited it flatly, no emotion. He said I should be grateful, that I was useless for anything else, that at least this way I'd finally be worth something. Dominic's jaw worked. What did he use? His belt, mostly. Sometimes other things. Other things like what? Does it matter? Yes. She looked at her hands. Whatever was close. A riding crop once. His hands. A cane he kept in his office for discipline. She made air quotes around the last word. Bitter. He called it character building. Character building, Dominic repeated quietly. Something in his voice made her look up. His expression hadn't changed, but his eyes had gone cold. And no one stopped him. No one intervened. Not family, not teachers, not doctors who must have seen the marks. People don't interfere in family matters, especially not with families like mine. Families like yours. Rich, connected, private. She shrugged. Everyone has secrets. Everyone looks the other way. He set down his pen. Did he ever... He stopped. Started again. Did he do anything else? Besides the beatings? It took her a second to understand what he was asking. When she did, her stomach turned over. No, she said quickly. No, never that. Just the hitting. Just, he echoed, as if that's not enough. It's not as bad as it could have been. That's not the defense you think it is. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, she could hear birds, the distant sound of a lawnmower, normal sounds, the world continuing like nothing was wrong. Why did you agree to the marriage? Dominic asked. I already told you. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not when the alternative is worse. What was the alternative? She hesitated. He said if I refused, he'd make sure I regretted it, that there were worse fates than marriage, that at least this way I'd have a roof over my head and food to eat. She paused. He also said you'd probably kill me within a year anyway, so it didn't matter much either way. He told you I'd kill you. He said you were dangerous, violent, that you'd hurt me worse than he ever did. She met his eyes. But then you didn't. So either he was wrong, or you're waiting. I'm not waiting. Then why? Why what? Why didn't you... She gestured vaguely. Last night. You could have. I expected you to. That's what husbands do, right? That's what wives are for. No, he said firmly. That's not what wives are for, and that's not what husbands do. At least not this one. But you still married me. Yes. Why? He was quiet for a long moment, then, because your father had something I needed. Access to his business network, his political connections. He was desperate, sloppy, made mistakes. I could have destroyed him, taken everything, but he offered an alternative. Me. You. He picked up his pen again, turned it between his fingers. I thought it would be simple. A marriage on paper, separate lives. You'd get financial security, I'd get what I needed. Everyone wins. Except you saw the scars. Except I saw the scars, he agreed. And I realized this wasn't the deal I thought it was. What do you mean? I mean your father didn't just sell me access to his network. He sold me his daughter to get rid of a problem. Dominic's voice had gone hard. He sold you to me knowing damn well what he'd done to you, knowing you'd be terrified, knowing you'd do whatever I wanted because you'd been trained to submit. She couldn't argue with that. So now I have a choice, he continued. I can pretend I don't know, use you like he expected me to, take what I want, ignore what came before. Or I can do something different. Like what? I don't know yet, he admitted. But not that. She studied him. This man she'd married less than 24 hours ago, trying to see past the reputation, past the cold exterior, to whatever was underneath. Are you going to send me back? She asked quietly. Back where? To my father. If this isn't what you wanted, if I'm not what you wanted, no. The word came out sharp, final. You're not going back there. Ever. Why not? Because I made a deal and I keep my word. You're my wife now. That means you're my responsibility. I don't want to be anyone's responsibility. Too bad. You are. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like another cage, different bars but still locked. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Really? If not that, then what?" "Honestly?" He set down the pen, met her eyes. "I want you to heal. Get therapy, get space, get whatever you need to process what was done to you. I want you to stop flinching every time I move. I want you to stop apologizing for existing." He paused. "And I want to make sure your father never touches you again." The last part sent a chill through her. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing you need to worry about." That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. She wanted to push, to demand clarity, but the look on his face stopped her. This was a man used to getting his way, used to making decisions and expecting them to be followed, used to control. "I have a question," she said. "Ask." If we're not going to have a real marriage, why keep me here at all? Why not just let me go?" "Where would you go?" She didn't have an answer. "You have no money," he continued. "No job, no skills that translate to independence. Your father would find you in a week. And even if he didn't, you're 20 years old with nothing but his name and his debts. What kind of life is that? Better than being trapped. You're not trapped. You're protected." He stood, walked to the window. "There's a difference." She wasn't sure she believed that. "Here's what happens next," Dominic said, still looking out at the grounds. "You stay here. You have freedom to move around, go where you want. I'll set up accounts for you. Money, credit cards, whatever you need. You'll see a therapist, someone who specializes in trauma. Not negotiable. And in return? In return, you be my wife. In public, at events, we present a united front. You play the part, smile for the cameras, don't embarrass me. In private?" He turned back to face her. "In private, you do whatever you want." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "And you get what out of this?" she asked. "I get what I always get. Power, leverage, your father's connections, his business network, plus the appearance of stability." He shrugged. "A man my age, unmarried, people talk, people wonder. This solves that problem. So I'm a prop." "We're all props in someone's story, Alara. At least this way you're a well-compensated one." She should have been angry, should have felt used, but mostly she just felt tired. "I need some air," she said, standing. "The grounds are yours. Just stay on the property." "Am I a prisoner?" "No, but the world outside is full of people with cameras and questions. Give it a few days before you face that." He wasn't wrong. She could already imagine the headlines. Hale's child bride. Business mogul's questionable marriage. Who is Alara Voss? The press would tear her apart, looking for scandal, for cracks in the facade. "Fine," she said. "I'll stay on the property." She left before he could say anything else, found her way back through the maze of halls to a door leading outside. The gardens were even more elaborate than they'd looked from above. Roses and hedges and sculptures, everything perfect and lifeless. She walked until she found a bench hidden behind a wall of ivy and sat, letting the sun warm her face. Birds sang nearby. Somewhere a fountain burbled. It was peaceful in a way that felt aggressive, like the world demanding she relax. She thought about her father, about the last time she'd seen him, at the reception, his hand on her shoulder as he whispered, "Make me proud." Like she was going off to college, not to a stranger's bed. She thought about Dominic, about the way he'd looked at her scars, the questions he'd asked, the promise of protection that felt too fragile to trust. She thought about the rest of her life, stretching ahead like a road she couldn't see the end of. And she thought about the fact that she was alive and free from her father's house. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Behind her, the mansion loomed. Inside, Dominic was probably still in his office, making deals, consolidating power, planning whatever he was planning. She didn't trust him, didn't fully believe him, but she also didn't have anywhere else to go. So she sat in the garden, in the sun, and tried to remember what it felt like to breathe without waiting for the next blow to fall. It would take practice. She had time. 3 days passed before her father called. Alara was in the library when Margaret found her, looking uncomfortable in a way that immediately set off alarm bells. There's a phone call for you, Margaret said. Your father. Mr. Hale said you could take it in his office if you want privacy. Privacy. As if anything about this situation was private. She found Dominic at his desk, phone on speaker, her father's voice already filling the room. Expect weekly updates. I want to know how she's adjusting, if there have been any problems. This is still a business arrangement, Hale. I have a right to know. You have no rights here, Dominic said evenly. He looked up at Alara, gestured to the chair across from him. She sat, her whole body tensing. Your daughter is on the line now. Say what you need to say. A pause. Then, Alara, how are you settling in? She knew that tone. Jovial, paternal, completely fake. The voice he used for business associates and dinner parties. Fine, she managed. Good, good, I'm glad to hear it. Your mother sends her love. Her mother hadn't spoken to her in 3 weeks. Tell her thank you, Alara said automatically. Now listen, sweetheart, I know this is an adjustment. New house, new husband, new life. But remember what we discussed. You represent our family now. Everything you do reflects on us. I understand. Do you? The warmth leaked out of his voice just slightly. Because I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings, any inappropriate conversations, any airing of private family matters. Dominic's eyes narrowed. There won't be, Alara said quickly. Excellent. Then I'm sure we'll all get along beautifully. Dominic, I trust you're finding everything satisfactory? Everything's fine, Dominic said, his voice giving nothing away. Wonderful. Well, I won't keep you. Just wanted to check in, make sure my little girl was being taken care of. That false warmth again, cloying and wrong. Alara, sweetheart, be good. You know what happens when you're not. The line went dead. The silence that followed felt like pressure, building and building until Alara thought her skull might crack. What happens when you're not good? Dominic asked quietly. She couldn't look at him. Nothing. He worries. That wasn't worry. That was a threat. You don't know him. I know men like him. He stood, walked around the desk. I've done business with dozens of them. Men who smile while they twist the knife. Men who call their cruelty love. Stop. He's warning you not to talk, not to tell me anything that might damage his reputation. I said stop, but he didn't. What did he mean? You know what happens? What does he do when you're not good, Alara? The same thing you'd do, she snapped, finally meeting his eyes. Whatever he wants, because that's how power works, right? You have it. I don't. He had it. I didn't. Same story, different house. Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe. Or hurt. I'm not your father. No, you're just the man he sold me to. The words hung between them, sharp and true and cruel. She watched him process them, watched his jaw tighten and his hands curl into fists. Get out, he said quietly. What? Leave. I need to make some calls. She stood, started toward the door, then stopped. What kind of calls? The kind that aren't your concern. If it's about my father, I said it's not your concern. He was already reaching for his phone, dismissing her. Go, find something to do. Margaret can show you around if you want. She left because she didn't have a choice, because this was his house and his rules and she was just living in it. But the anger stayed with her, hot and acidic, burning in her chest. She found Margaret in the kitchen, arranging flowers in a vase. Everything all right? The housekeeper asked, glancing up. Fine, Alara lied. He said you could show me around, if you have time. Of course. Margaret set down the scissors, wiped her hands on her apron. Where would you like to start? Anywhere that's not here. They walked for an hour. Margaret showed her the gym, the pool house, the wine cellar, the screening room, the garage full of cars Alara didn't know the names of, everything vast and expensive and hollow. How long have you worked here? Alara asked as they crossed back through the garden. 8 years, since Mr. Hale bought the property. What's he like? As a boss, I mean. Margaret considered the question carefully. Fair, demanding, but fair. He expects things done right, but he pays well and doesn't interfere much. Keeps to himself mostly. Does he have friends, people who visit? Business associates mostly. The occasional woman, before... She stopped. looked uncomfortable. Before he got married, Ilara finished. Yes. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Margaret said quietly, He's not what people say he is, you know. The rumors, the stories, most of it's exaggerated. What do people say he is? Ruthless, cold, dangerous. Margaret paused by a rosebush, touched one of the blooms gently. But I've seen him be kind too, when no one's watching, when there's nothing to gain from it. Ilara wanted to believe that. Wanted to think the man who'd stepped back on their wedding night, who'd asked about her scars, who'd promised protection, wanted to think that version was real. But she'd learned a long time ago that kindness was usually just cruelty waiting to happen. Thank you for the tour, she said. I should probably go rest. Margaret nodded, headed back toward the house. Ilara stayed in the garden, sitting on the same bench as before, watching the sun move across the sky. She thought about her father's call, the warning beneath the pleasantries. She thought about Dominic's reaction, the way he'd gone cold and hard, the calls he was making. She thought about what it meant to be a piece in someone else's game. The sun was setting when Dominic found her. I've been looking for you, he said. She didn't turn around. Well, you found me. He sat on the other end of the bench, keeping distance between them. For a while, neither spoke. I made some calls, he finally said. Called in some favors. Your father's business is more precarious than he let on. Without my backing, he'll be bankrupt in 6 months. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know what leverage we have, what cards we're holding. We? She did look at him then. There is no we. You made that clear. This is your game. I'm just along for the ride. That's not what I meant earlier. Isn't it? She stood, started walking. He followed. I was angry, he said. You compared me to your father. I don't react well to that. So you kicked me out. So I needed space before I said something I'd regret. He caught up to her, moved in front of her so she had to stop. I'm not good at this. At talking, at explaining. I'm used to giving orders and having them followed. I noticed. But you're not an employee. He stopped, searching for the right word. You're my wife, which means I need to figure out how to talk to you without defaulting to command mode. Why bother? You own me either way. I don't own you. Legally, you do. That's how marriage works. Or did you miss that part of the contract? His jaw tightened. The law's an ass. I don't care what the paperwork says. You're a person, not property. Then treat me like one. How? The question seemed genuine, like he actually didn't know. Stop making decisions for me, she said. Stop shutting me out. Stop treating me like I'm too fragile or too stupid to handle the truth. You're neither of those things. Then why won't you tell me what calls you made? What you're planning? He was quiet for a long moment, then, come with me. He led her back to his office, pulled out files from a locked cabinet, spread them across his desk. Financial records, legal documents, pages of numbers and terminology she didn't understand. This is your father's company, he said, pointing to one stack. Revenue's been declining for 3 years. He's hemorrhaging money, making bad investments, losing contracts. He needed cash fast, needed connections to stabilize. That's where I came in. I already know this. What you don't know is that I own 40% of his company now, and I've been buying up his debts from other creditors. In total, he owes me about $5 million. Money he can't pay back. She stared at the numbers, trying to process. So what does that mean? It means I can destroy him whenever I want. Call in the debts, pull my backing, watch him crumble. He looked at her. Or I can keep him afloat, keep funding his failing business, keep pretending the merger's working out, as long as he behaves. Behaves how? Stays away from you, doesn't call, doesn't visit, doesn't contact you in any way. If he does, Dominic tapped one of the folders. If he does, I pull everything, bankrupt him, ruin him, make sure everyone knows why. The weight of it settled over her. You're blackmailing my father. I'm protecting you. By threatening him. Yes. She should have been horrified, should have felt guilty, complicit, but mostly what she felt was relief, cold and clean and slightly terrifying. What if he doesn't care, she asked. What if he'd rather go bankrupt than leave me alone? Then he's stupider than I thought. Dominic started gathering the files. But I don't think he will. Men like your father, they care about two things, money and reputation. Lose both and they're nothing. He knows that. So I'm bait. You're the reason. There's a difference. She wasn't sure there was. I need you to understand something, Dominic said, locking the files away. What I'm doing, the calls, the leverage, the threats, it's not about you being weak. It's about him being dangerous. Men who beat their daughters don't stop just because someone asks nicely. They stop when they have no other choice. And you're giving him no choice. Exactly. It made a sick kind of sense. She'd grown up in this world, knew how power worked, knew that sometimes the only language people understood was force. What if he calls your bluff? She asked. He won't. But what if he does? Then I follow through. He said it simply, like discussing the weather. I destroy him, take everything he has, and make sure he never bothers you again. You'd really do that? Yes. No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. Why? The question came out softer than she meant it to. Why go this far for someone you barely know? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because I've spent 20 years building an empire, making money, accumulating power, crushing anyone who got in my way. And somewhere along the line, I forgot what it was all for. He looked at her. Your father sold you to me like you were nothing, like you were a problem to be solved. And I could have treated you that way, used you, ignored you, done exactly what he expected. But then I saw those scars and I thought, he stopped, started again. I thought, here's a chance to do something different, to use all this power for something other than more power. So I'm your redemption arc. You're a person who deserves better than what you got. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. They stood in the silence, something unspoken hanging between them. Ilara felt off balance, like the ground kept shifting beneath her feet. Every time she thought she understood what this was, what he wanted, it changed. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Do what? Trust you. Believe you. Any of it. She wrapped her arms around herself. Everyone who was supposed to protect me hurt me instead. How am I supposed to believe you're different? You're not. Not yet. He leaned against the desk. Trust is earned. I get that. So I'll earn it. How? By keeping my word. By not touching you until you want me to. By making sure your father never hurts you again. He paused. By being patient, even when you compare me to him. The last part stung, a reminder of what she'd said earlier. I shouldn't have said that, she said quietly. You believed it when you said it. Maybe you still do. I don't know what I believe anymore. That's fair? She looked at him, really looked, trying to see past the reputation and the walls and the careful control. Trying to find the truth underneath. What do you want from this marriage? She asked. Really? Long term? I don't know, he admitted. I thought I did. Thought it would be simple, a transaction, separate lives, mutual benefit. But then you were terrified of me and I realized I didn't want that. Didn't want someone who said yes out of fear. So what do you want? A partner, maybe. Someone who can hold her own. Someone who chooses to be here. He shrugged. But that's a long way off. Right now, I just want you to feel safe. I don't know if I can. I know, but we'll work on it. There was that certainty again, like if he decided something would happen. It would. Like his will alone could reshape reality. Maybe it could. He'd reshaped her father's reality easily enough. I'm going to make dinner, she said abruptly. Do you eat dinner, or do you just survive on coffee and power? He actually smiled, small, brief, but real. I eat, usually whatever Margaret leaves, but I haven't had someone cook for me in years. Don't get excited, I'm not very good. Better than nothing. She left him in his office, found her way to the kitchen. Margaret had left ingredients prepped in the fridge: chicken, vegetables, rice. Simple stuff. Ilara started cooking, working from muscle memory and her mother's grudging lessons. The routine of it calmed her. Chopping vegetables, heating oil, measuring spices. Tasks with clear outcomes. Do this, get that. No hidden meanings, no power plays. She was adding rice to the pot when Dominic appeared in the doorway. "Smells good," he said. "It's basic. Still counts." He moved to the counter, watching her work. "Where'd you learn?" "My mother. She said a wife should know how to cook, even if she has staff. It's about appearances." "Everything's about appearances with them, isn't it?" "Pretty much." She stirred the rice, adjusted the heat. "What about you? Did your parents care about appearances?" "My parents died when I was 17. Car accident." She turned, startled. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Why would you? It's not exactly first date conversation." He pulled out a bottle of wine, poured 2 glasses without asking. "After they died, I inherited the family business. Small manufacturing company, struggling. Spent the next 5 years turning it around, then selling it for 10 times what it was worth. Used that money to start acquiring other companies. Built from there." "So you've been doing this since you were a kid?" "Since I was barely older than you are now, yeah." He slid a glass toward her. "Learned early that sentiment doesn't pay the bills. That you can't trust people to have your best interests at heart. That the only person you can rely on is yourself." "Sounds lonely." "It was. Is." He took a drink. "But it's also safe. Can't be betrayed if you don't let anyone close." "Is that why you've never married before?" "Part of it. The other part is I never met anyone who could handle this life. The pressure, the scrutiny. The fact that I'm married to my work first and everything else second. And you think I can handle it?" "I think you've survived worse. You're tougher than you look." She wasn't sure that was a compliment. They ate at the kitchen island instead of the formal dining room, conversation drifting between safe topics. The food was decent. Not great, but edible. He ate like he did everything else. Focused, efficient, no wasted motion. "I have an event next week," he said as they were finishing. "Charity gala, business people and politicians. We need to make an appearance." Her stomach dropped. "Together? We're married. People expect to see us together." He must have seen her expression because he added, "It's just a few hours. Smile, make small talk. Let them see we're a united front. Then we leave." "I don't know if I can." "You can. You've been trained for this your whole life." He was right. She'd spent years at her father's side at events just like this, playing the perfect daughter, smiling, agreeing, never saying anything interesting or controversial or real. She could do it. She just didn't want to. "What if someone asked questions?" she said. "About us? About the marriage? Tell them we're very happy. That it was love at first sight. Whatever lie makes them go away." He picked up their plates, started washing them. "The story is simple. We met through business, fell for each other, decided why wait. Keep it vague, keep it boring. And if they don't believe it, they will. People believe what they want to believe. Rich man marries young woman. It's a tale as old as time. Some will be jealous, some will judge, but they'll all accept it." She watched him wash dishes, this powerful man doing something so mundane. It didn't fit the image. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always." "Why do you do that? The dishes. You have staff." "Because I can. Because sometimes it's nice to do something with a clear beginning and end." He rinsed the last plate. "And because I grew up doing my own dishes. Some habits stick." The glimpse of normalcy felt strange, like seeing behind a mask she hadn't realized he was wearing. "What was your family like?" she asked. "Before they died?" "Normal, I guess. Dad worked too much. Mom tried to hold everything together. They fought about money, about time, about the business. But they loved each other, loved me." He dried his hands. "It wasn't perfect, but it was real." "Do you miss them?" "Every day." He said it simply, without drama. "But missing them doesn't bring them back, so you move forward." She understood that. Had spent her whole life moving forward because standing still meant being a target. "I should probably go to bed," she said, suddenly exhausted. "It's been a long day." "It has." He didn't move to stop her. "Sleep well, Ilara." She made it to the door before turning back. "Thank you." "For what?" "For the files, for showing me what you're doing, for treating me like I can handle the truth." "You can handle more than you think." She wanted to believe that. Upstairs, her room felt less foreign than it had 3 days ago. She showered, changed into pajamas she'd found in the dresser, Someone's idea of what she should wear, soft and expensive, and nothing like what she'd owned before. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about trust and power, and the strange man she'd married, thinking about her father and the leverage Dominic held over him, thinking about the gala next week and having to pretend to be happy, thinking about the fact that, for the first time in her life, someone had asked what she wanted. She didn't fall asleep until well past midnight. The days that followed developed a rhythm. Breakfast alone while Dominic worked. Mornings in the library or garden, lunch that Margaret insisted she eat. Afternoons exploring the property or avoiding Dominic's office. Dinners together in the kitchen, where they talked about nothing important and everything significant. He didn't push, didn't demand, just existed in the same space, giving her room to breathe. On the fourth day, a woman arrived. Mid-50s, professional, carrying a leather bag. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen," Dominic said, introducing them in the library. "She's a therapist, specializes in trauma." Alara's first instinct was to refuse. To say she was fine, didn't need help, could handle it herself. But then she remembered the scars on her back, the nightmares that woke her at 3 in the morning, the way she still flinched when anyone moved too fast. "Okay," she said. Dr. Chen smiled. "Why don't we talk in the garden? Sometimes outdoor spaces feel less intimidating." They sat on a bench, the same bench Ilara had claimed as hers, and talked. Or rather, Dr. Chen talked and Ilara listened, feeling like she was being gently dissected. "I'm not here to fix you, doctor," Chen said after the first hour. "You're not broken, but you've been hurt, and hurt changes us. My job is to help you understand how and give you tools to cope. What if I don't want to cope? What if I just want to forget? You can't forget trauma, but you can learn to carry it differently." They met 3 times that week. Each session felt like pulling out shards of glass embedded too deep to see. Painful, necessary, exhausting. Dominic never asked what they discussed, just made sure Dr. Chen had everything she needed and gave Ilara space afterward. The night before the gala, Ilara couldn't sleep. She paced her room, then the hallway, then found herself outside Dominic's door. She knocked before she could reconsider. "Come in." He was awake, reading in bed, glasses on, shirt off, looking almost human. "I can't do it," she said from the doorway. "The gala. I can't." He set down his book. "Why not?" "Because I'll mess it up. Say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, embarrass you. You won't. You don't know that. I know you survived 20 years with your father. This is nothing compared to that." He patted the bed. "Come here." She hesitated, then sat on the edge, keeping distance. "What are you afraid of?" he asked. "Specifically, that people will see through me, that they'll know I'm just pretending, that they'll ask questions I can't answer. So we practice." He shifted to face her. "Ask me a question someone might ask you." "What?" "Practice. I'll be a nosy socialite. You be you." He cleared his throat, put on a falsely bright voice. "Mrs. Hale, congratulations on your marriage. How did you and Dominic meet?" She almost laughed despite herself. "Through business. My father and Dominic were working together." "How romantic," fake Dominic gushed. "And was it love at first sight?" "Not exactly, but sometimes the best relationships start with friendship." "Good," he said in his normal voice. Vague, believable, gives them nothing to work with. "Next question. Aren't you a bit young for him?" "Age is just a number. We connect on what matters." "Better. What are your plans? Will you be working or focusing on family?" She faltered. "I don't know." "Then say that. Say you're exploring your options, taking time to adjust. No one expects a new bride to have her whole life figured out." They practiced for an hour, running through scenarios until her answers felt almost natural, until she could smile and deflect and lie with the same ease she'd learned from her father. "You'll be fine," Dominic said finally. "And if anyone makes you uncomfortable, find me. I'll handle it." "What if they make you uncomfortable?" "Then I'll handle that too. I've been dealing with these people for 20 years. They're all the same. Hungry for gossip, desperate to feel superior, looking for weakness." He took off his glasses. "Don't give them any." She stood to go, then paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Haven't you been asking me things all night?" "Something different." She turned back. Do you ever wish you'd made a different choice? Married someone else? Or not at all? He considered the question seriously. No, this was the right choice. How do you know? Because I'm rarely wrong about these things. The arrogance should have annoyed her. Instead, it was almost comforting. At least he was consistent. She went back to her room and slept better than she had all week. The dress arrived the morning of the gala. Ilara found it hanging in her closet, still in a garment bag, with a note pinned to the front in Dominic's handwriting. Wear this. Shoes and jewelry in the boxes. Be ready by 7. She unzipped the bag slowly, half expecting something revealing or ostentatious. Instead, she found a floor-length gown in deep emerald silk, elegant and understated. The kind of dress that whispered money instead of shouting it. The shoes were Louboutin, the jewelry simple diamonds. Everything in her size, everything perfect. Everything chosen by someone who understood exactly what image they wanted to project. She tried it all on at 6, standing in front of the full-length mirror and barely recognizing herself. The girl staring back looked older, polished, like she belonged in Dominic's world. The dress hid her scars completely, the neckline high enough to be modest, the cut sophisticated without being stuffy. She looked like a wife. His wife. The thought made her stomach twist. At 7 exactly, she went downstairs. Dominic was waiting in the foyer, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked up when she appeared and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or approval. You look good, he said. Thanks. So do you. He did. The tuxedo fit him perfectly, making him look less like a businessman and more like someone who commanded rooms just by walking into them. Ready? He asked. She wasn't, but she nodded anyway. The car ride took 30 minutes, winding through the city to a hotel downtown, the kind with gold fixtures and marble everything, where charity galas cost $1,000 a plate and the champagne flowed like water. Remember, Dominic said as they pulled up to the entrance, we're happy, we're in love, we're everything they expect us to be. What if I forget? You won't, just follow my lead. The car door opened. Flash bulbs exploded. Dominic got out first, then offered his hand. She took it, letting him pull her up and out into the glare of cameras and shouted questions. Mr. Hale, over here. Mrs. Hale, look this way. How does it feel to be married? Dominic's hand found the small of her back, guiding her forward. She smiled the way she'd been taught, pleasant, demure, nothing too bright or too real. They posed for photos, Dominic's arm around her waist, her body angled toward his like they did this every day, like they were actually a couple. Inside, the ballroom glittered, crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, hundreds of people in expensive clothes pretending to care about whatever charity this gala supposedly supported. Ilara had been to a dozen events exactly like this with her father. She knew the rhythm, the performance. She just hadn't expected it to feel different on Dominic's arm instead of her father's. Dominic! A man in his 60s appeared, hand extended. Good to see you. And this must be the lovely bride. Thomas, meet my wife, Ilara. Ilara? Thomas Brennan. We serve on a board together. Charmed, Thomas said, taking her hand. His grip was too firm, held too long. Dominic's been keeping you hidden away. Can't say I blame him. Ilara's smile didn't waver. Just settling in. It's all been quite a whirlwind. I bet. What a lucky man. Thomas clapped Dominic on the shoulder. You'll have to bring her to the club sometime. The wives would love to meet her. We'll see, Dominic said smoothly, already steering her away. Under his breath, he muttered, pompous ass. Friend of yours? Business acquaintance? There's a difference. They made their way through the crowd, stopping every few feet for introductions. Ilara smiled and nodded and said all the right things, her face starting to ache from the constant performance. Dominic never left her side, his hand always on her back or her elbow, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. It should have felt possessive. Instead, it felt almost protective. Mrs. Hale, a woman's voice called. Ilara turned to find a blonde in her 40s approaching, champagne in hand and predatory interest in her eyes. I'm Veronica Chen. I've been dying to meet you. Nice to meet you, Ilara said automatically. You must tell me everything. How you met, how he proposed, all the details. Veronica leaned in conspiratorially. Between us girls, I've been trying to land Dominic Hale for years. You must have quite the magic touch. Alara felt Dominic tense beside her. We met through business, she said, keeping her voice light. My father and Dominic were working together. Things just developed naturally from there. How romantic, Veronica said, in a tone that suggested she found it anything but. And you're so young. What are you, 22, 23? 20. 20? Veronica's laugh was sharp. Well, Dominic always did like them young. Though I must say he usually got bored after a few months. You must be something special. She is, Dominic said, his voice cold enough to frost glass. If you'll excuse us, Veronica, we need to find our table. He steered Alara away before the woman could respond, his jaw tight. Ignore her, he said once they were out of earshot. She's bitter because I turned her down 3 years ago, and she's never gotten over it. She's not wrong, though. I am young. People are going to judge. Let them. Their opinions don't matter. Don't they? This is all about appearances, right? About what people think. About what they see, he corrected. And what they see is a married couple. That's all they need to know. They found their table, front and center, of course, because Dominic Hale didn't sit anywhere else. The other couples at the table were all older, all wealthy, all very interested in the new Mrs. Hale. Dinner was served in courses. Alara pushed food around her plate, too nervous to eat, while making small talk with the woman on her left about gardens and charity work and all the meaningless topics rich women discussed. Dominic fielded questions from the men about markets and investments, his attention divided between the conversation and watching Alara. She felt his gaze on her periodically, checking, assessing, making sure she was okay. Halfway through the main course, her father arrived. She saw him before Dominic did, watched him enter the ballroom with her mother on his arm, both of them dressed like they'd come from a photo shoot. Her father's eyes swept the room and locked on her immediately. Her breath caught. What's wrong? Dominic asked quietly. He's here. She didn't look away from her father, couldn't. My father. He's here. Dominic followed her gaze, his expression going carefully blank. I didn't know he was on the guest list. Does it matter? He's here now. It matters. Something hard entered his voice. Stay here. What? No. But he was already standing, already crossing the ballroom with the kind of purpose that made people step aside. Alara watched him intercept her father near the bar, watched the two men face each other like opposing generals. She couldn't hear what they were saying over the noise of the event, but she could read her father's body language, the false smile, the smooth gestures, the way he glanced toward her and back to Dominic. Dominic said something short. Her father's smile tightened. They stood there for another moment, some silent battle of wills happening in the space between them, and then her father nodded once and turned away. Dominic came back to the table, his face unreadable. What did you say to him? Alara asked. That he wasn't welcome at our table. That if he approached you, I'd make a scene he wouldn't recover from. He picked up his wine glass. He understood. He won't like being told what to do. I don't care what he likes. But Alara knew her father, knew that humiliation festered in him like poison, that he never forgot a slight or forgave a challenge. Dominic might have sent him away tonight, but there would be consequences. There were always consequences. She made it through the rest of dinner on autopilot, hyper-aware of her father's presence across the ballroom. She could feel him watching her, could imagine the calculations running through his head. How to use this, how to spin it, how to regain control. After dinner came speeches, boring, rehearsed, full of statistics about whatever cause they were supposedly supporting. Alara stopped listening halfway through the first one, her attention drifting to her father's table. He was talking to someone, his hand on the man's shoulder, laughing at some joke. Playing the role of successful businessman, devoted husband, pillar of society. No one looking at him would guess what he was capable of, what he'd done to her. Dance with me, Dominic said suddenly. She looked at him, startled. What? Dance. They're starting the music. People expect it. He was right. Couples were moving to the dance floor, the band playing something slow and classical. Alara let him lead her out, his hand settling at her waist, hers on his shoulder. They moved together stiffly at first, both of them too aware of the eyes on them. But Dominic was a good dancer, surprisingly so, and he guided her through the steps with confidence. You're thinking too hard, he said. I'm trying not to mess up. You're doing fine. Just relax. Easy for you to say. Your father isn't watching from across the room. His hand tightened slightly at her waist. Look at me. Not at him. At me. She did. Up close, his eyes were darker than she'd realized, almost black in the dim lighting. There were lines around them, signs of age and stress, and too many years of not sleeping enough. Better, he said. Now just breathe. They danced in silence for a moment, the music washing over them. Elara tried to focus on the steps, on the pressure of his hand, on anything except the knowledge that her father was somewhere behind her. He's angry, she said quietly. I know. He'll retaliate. Find some way to make me pay for this. He can try. Dominic's voice was calm, certain. But he won't get close enough. You can't watch me every second. No, but I can make sure he knows what happens if he tries anything. He guided her through a turn. Do you trust me? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Fair enough. But trust this. I meant what I said. He's not going to hurt you again, not while I'm alive. The conviction in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified her, because promises like that had weight, had consequences, because men who made them usually ended up breaking them, or getting broken themselves. The song ended. They stood there for a moment, neither moving, until someone bumped into them and broke the spell. We should probably circulate, Dominic said. Make the rounds. They spent the next hour moving through the crowd, Dominic introducing her to what felt like every person in the room. Business partners, political contacts, society wives who looked at her with varying degrees of curiosity and contempt. She smiled until her face hurt, made small talk until her brain felt numb, played the role of dutiful wife until she wanted to scream. Through it all, she was aware of her father. He never approached, never spoke to her, but he was always there in her peripheral vision, watching, waiting. At 10, Dominic leaned down and murmured, We can leave soon. Another 20 minutes, and we'll have put in enough time. Thank God, she breathed. But before they could make their exit, her father appeared. He materialized beside them with her mother in tow, both wearing expressions of pleasant surprise, like this was a chance encounter and not carefully orchestrated. Dominic, her father said warmly, extending his hand. What a coincidence running into you here. Dominic didn't take the offered hand. Richard. The rejection hung in the air, obvious to everyone watching. Her father's smile didn't waver, but something cold entered his eyes. And my darling daughter, he continued, turning to Elara. Don't you look beautiful? Marriage clearly agrees with you. She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up entirely, her body going rigid. We were just leaving, Dominic said. So soon? But we've barely had a chance to catch up. Her father's hand landed on her shoulder, familiar and heavy and wrong. I haven't seen my little girl since the wedding. Surely you can spare a few minutes for her father. Elara felt Dominic go still beside her. The air between the two men turned sharp, dangerous. Take your hand off her, Dominic said quietly. Her father's grip tightened. I'm her father. I have every right. You have no rights here. Dominic's voice cut like a blade. Remove your hand or I'll remove it for you. People were starting to notice, conversations faltering, heads turning. Her mother made a small sound of distress. Really, Dominic, there's no need to make a scene, her father said, but his hand dropped from Elara's shoulder. I'm simply trying to have a word with my daughter. Your daughter is my wife now, which means you go through me. Dominic positioned himself slightly in front of Elara, blocking her father's view. And I'm telling you to leave. This is ridiculous. Elara, tell him, don't! Dominic's command was absolute. Don't speak to her. Don't look at her. Don't come near her again. Her father's mask slipped just for a second. Elara saw the rage beneath, the cold fury he usually reserved for private moments. Her mother saw it too and put a hand on his arm. Richard, perhaps we should... We're not going anywhere. But he stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. Though I have to say, Dominic, I'm disappointed. I thought we had an understanding. We did. You broke it by coming here tonight. This is a public event. I'm a donor. I have every right to be here. Not anymore. Dominic pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. You're being removed from the donor list as we speak. In fact, you're being removed from every list I have influence over. Board positions, club memberships, charity committees. He looked up. Consider it done. Her father's face went white, then red. You can't do that. I just did. Over what? Speaking to my own daughter? Over thinking you still have power here. Dominic pocketed his phone. You sold her to me, remember? That was your choice. But part of that deal was staying away. You violated the terms. Now you deal with the consequences. This is insane. Ilara, tell him. I said, don't speak to her. Dominic's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, but it carried weight that made people nearby take a step back. In fact, don't speak at all. Just leave while you still can. For a long moment, her father didn't move, just stood there trembling with rage, his hands clenched into fists. Ilara knew that look, knew what came after it. But they weren't alone in his study. They were in a ballroom full of witnesses, and Dominic Hale stood between them like a wall. This isn't over, her father said finally. Yes, Dominic replied. It is. Her father turned and walked away, her mother hurrying after him. Ilara watched them go, her whole body shaking with adrenaline and fear, and something that might have been relief. The ballroom had gone quiet. Everyone was staring. Dominic took her hand. We're leaving. He led her through the crowd, ignoring the whispers and stares, his grip on her hand firm and steady. The car was already waiting when they got outside, the driver holding the door. Ilara got in, her legs barely supporting her weight. Dominic slid in beside her and the car pulled away from the hotel, leaving the chaos behind. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Are you okay? Dominic asked finally. She shook her head, couldn't form words. He touched you, after I told him not to. His voice was tight, controlled. I should have handled that differently. How? By hitting him? She found her voice rough and shaky. You did enough, more than enough. I humiliated him publicly, made enemies of everyone in his circle. He looked out the window. There will be fallout. I know. Are you angry that I did it? She thought about that. Thought about watching her father walk away, powerless for once. Thought about Dominic standing between them, refusing to let him get close. No, she said. I'm not angry. Then what are you? Scared? She wrapped her arms around herself. He's going to come after us, after me. You don't know him like I do. He won't let this go. Let him try. You keep saying that, but what if he does? What if he finds a way? Dominic turned to face her. Then I'll deal with it, however I have to. What does that mean? It means I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Legally you are, and even if you weren't, he stopped. I'm not letting him hurt you again. That's not negotiable. She wanted to argue, wanted to point out that no one had ever been able to protect her from her father, that promises like that always broke, that she'd learned long ago not to rely on anyone but herself. But she was too tired, too wrung out from the gala and the confrontation and holding herself together for hours. So she just nodded and looked out the window as the city slid past. When they got home, she went straight to her room, changed out of the dress, washed off the makeup, took down her hair until she looked like herself again, small and young and exhausted. There was a knock at her door around midnight. Come in, she called, expecting Margaret. It was Dominic, still in his tuxedo pants and shirt, tie gone, looking as tired as she felt. Can't sleep? He asked. No. You? No. He leaned against the doorframe. I keep replaying tonight, thinking about what I should have done differently. You did what you had to do. I made a spectacle, drew attention, exactly what we didn't want. He made the spectacle by showing up, by touching me. She pulled her knees to her chest. You just finished it. Still, there will be talk. There's always talk. He was quiet for a moment, then, are you really scared of what he might do? Yes. Why? Because I know him, know how he operates. He'll wait until we feel safe, until our guard is down, and then he'll strike. So we don't let our guard down. For how long? Forever? If that's what it takes. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that Dominic's power and money and influence could keep her safe. But she'd spent too many years learning that safety was an illusion, that no one could protect you from the monsters in your own house. He used to tell me I was ungrateful, she said quietly, that he gave me everything, food, clothes, education, and I repaid him by being difficult, by making him discipline me. She rested her chin on her knees. He actually believed it, believed he was the victim. Dominic crossed the room, sat on the edge of her bed. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that she could feel his presence. My father used to tell me that weakness was a choice, he said, that if you let people hurt you, it was your own fault. That real men took what they wanted and didn't apologize. He paused. I spent 20 years proving I wasn't weak, building an empire, crushing competitors, never letting anyone get close enough to hurt me. And then I met you and realized that maybe the real weakness was needing to prove anything at all. She looked at him, surprised. That's very philosophical for midnight. I'm tired. I get philosophical when I'm tired. What else do you get? Honest. He met her eyes. I didn't expect this, Ilara. Any of it. I thought marrying you would be simple, a transaction, separate lives. But then you were terrified and scarred and apologizing for existing, and I couldn't just ignore that. Why not? Most people would have. Because I'm not most people. And because somewhere along the way, I started giving a damn about what happened to you. He stood. Which is inconvenient and complicated and not at all what I signed up for. Sorry to complicate your life. Don't apologize. I'm getting tired of hearing you apologize. She almost smiled. It's habit. Break it. He headed for the door, paused at the threshold. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we deal with the fallout from tonight. What fallout? Your father's going to retaliate. Probably call in favors, spread rumors, try to damage my reputation. Standard playbook for wounded egos. He shrugged. We'll handle it. How? By being better at this game than he is. He looked back at her. Trust me on that much, at least. After he left, Ilara lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about trust. About what it meant to give someone that kind of power over you. About whether she was brave enough or stupid enough to try. She fell asleep without reaching a conclusion. The next morning she woke to her phone ringing. A number she didn't recognize. She answered without thinking. Hello? You think you're safe? Her father's voice, cold and sharp. You think he can protect you? Her blood went cold. How did you get this number? I'm your father. I get what I want. A pause. You embarrassed me last night. Made me look weak in front of my colleagues. That has consequences. Dominic will what? Watch you every second? Lock you up? Her father laughed, ugly and bitter. You're still my daughter, Ilara. That doesn't change because you have a new keeper. I'm not your daughter anymore. Blood doesn't work that way. You'll always be mine. Always be the ungrateful little girl who needs to be taught lessons. The line went dead. Ilara sat there, phone in her shaking hand, her father's words echoing in her head. She should tell Dominic, should show him this was exactly what she'd warned about, but part of her, the part trained by years of her father's manipulations, whispered that telling would only make it worse, that fighting back always made it worse. She was still sitting there, frozen and uncertain, when Dominic knocked and entered without waiting for an answer. He took one look at her face and his expression hardened. What happened? She held out the phone wordlessly. He took it, checked the call log, his jaw tightening. What did he say? She told him. All of it. Watched his face go from anger to something colder, more controlled. All right, he said finally. That's how he wants to play it. What are you going to do? What I should have done the day I married you. He pulled out his own phone. I'm ending this. Dominic made 3 calls before Ilara could fully process what was happening. The first was to his lawyer. I need a restraining order filed today. Harassment, threatening phone calls, the works. Yes, I know it's Sunday. I don't care. Make it happen. The second was to someone he called Marcus. I need surveillance on Richard Voss. Phone records, financial transactions, who he's meeting with, everything, and I need it yesterday. The third was to a number Ilara didn't recognize. It's Hale. We need to talk about our mutual friend, the one who owes me $5 million. Time to call it in. He hung up and looked at her. Get dressed. We're going out. Where? To see your mother. That stopped her cold. Why? Because she's been living with him for 20 years. She knows things, and I need to know them too. She won't talk to you. She never talks about him. She will today. His voice had that certainty again, the kind that suggested he'd already decided how this would go, and reality would just have to catch up. Get dressed. Something comfortable. We might be there a while. 30 minutes later, they were in the car, driving toward the neighborhood Alara had grown up in. She hadn't been back since the wedding, hadn't wanted to be. Every street corner held memories she'd rather forget. "What are you going to say to her?" she asked as they pulled up to the familiar house. "The truth, that her husband is threatening her daughter, and I need information to stop him." "She won't see it that way. She'll see it as me causing trouble, being ungrateful. Then I'll convince her otherwise." He got out of the car, came around to open her door. "Come on." The house looked the same. Pristine lawn, expensive cars in the driveway, everything maintained to within an inch of its life. Her father's domain, carefully curated to project success. Dominic rang the doorbell. Waited. Rang again. Her mother answered, dressed in casual clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her face registered shock when she saw them. "Alara, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," Dominic said before Alara could answer. "Can we come in?" "Richard's not home." "I know, that's why we're here." Her mother hesitated, clearly torn between ingrained hospitality and the desire to slam the door. Hospitality won. It always did with her. "Fine, but only for a few minutes." The living room was exactly as Alara remembered. Expensive furniture arranged in conversation groupings no one ever used. Art on the walls chosen by a decorator, not because anyone liked it. Everything perfect and cold and lifeless. Her mother perched on the edge of a chair, back straight, hands folded, the posture of someone always expecting inspection. "What's this about?" she asked. "Your husband called Alara this morning," Dominic said, sitting across from her. Alara remained standing, too nervous to sit. Threatened her. Said she'd always be his, that there would be consequences for what happened at the gala. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Dominic's voice was firm but not unkind. "You've lived with him for 20 years. You know exactly what he's capable of." Her mother's hands tightened in her lap. "Whatever issues you have with Richard, they're between you and him. Leave me out of it." "I can't do that. Because this isn't just about business anymore, it's about your daughter's safety." "Alara is fine. She's with you now. She's your responsibility." The dismissal in those words stung more than Alara expected, like she was a package that had been delivered and signed for, no longer her mother's concern. "When did it start?" Dominic asked. "The abuse. Please don't lie. We both know what he did to her, what he's probably still doing to you." Her mother's face went pale. "You have no right to come into my home and make accusations." "I have every right. I'm her husband, and I'm trying to protect her from a man who beat her for 20 years while you looked the other way." "I never—" Her mother's voice cracked. "I never looked away." "Then what did you do?" The question was quiet, devastating. "When he hurt her, what did you do?" Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Alara watched her mother struggle with the answer, watched decades of denial and self-preservation war with something that might have been guilt. "What could I do?" her mother finally whispered. "He's my husband. This is my home. Where was I supposed to go?" "Anywhere," Alara said, surprising herself. "You could have gone anywhere, taken me with you, started over." "With what money? What skills?" Her mother looked up, and for the first time Alara saw real emotion in her eyes. Not love, maybe, but something close to pain. "I married your father when I was 22. I've never worked, never had my own accounts. Everything I have is his. Everything I am is his. So you sacrificed me instead." "I didn't—" Her mother's composure finally cracked. "I tried to protect you, in my own way. I taught you to be quiet, to not antagonize him, to survive." "That's not protection. That's collaboration." "You don't understand. You can't understand what it's like to be trapped." "I understand perfectly," Alara said. "I lived it too. The difference is I was a child. You're an adult who made choices." Her mother stood abruptly. I think you should leave. Not yet. Dominic remained seated. I need information, financial records, business dealings, anything that might give me leverage. Things Richard wouldn't want made public. Why would I help you? Because he's going to come after Alara, and when he does, I need ammunition to stop him permanently. Dominic leaned forward. Help me, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. A separate account, enough money to leave if you want to. Your choice. And if I don't help? Then you're complicit in whatever he does next, and when it all falls apart, and it will fall apart, you'll go down with him. Her mother sank back into her chair. You're asking me to betray my husband. I'm asking you to protect your daughter, finally. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Alara watched her mother process them, watched the calculation behind her eyes. Not maternal instinct, not guilt or love, but simple self-preservation weighing the options. There's a safe, her mother said finally, in his study, behind the painting of the harbor. The combination is my birthday, month, day, year. He keeps records there. Things he doesn't want his accountants to see. What kind of things? Payments to people, cash transactions, names and dates. She twisted her hands together. I don't know details. I learned not to ask questions. Show me. Her mother led them upstairs to her father's study. Alara hadn't been in this room since she was a child, had learned early that this was forbidden territory. The smell hit her immediately, leather and whiskey and her father's cologne. Her stomach turned. Dominic went straight to the painting, a seascape her father had bought at auction. He lifted it down carefully, revealing the safe behind. Her mother recited the numbers, and he spun the dial, working the combination. The safe clicked open. Inside were folders, stacks of cash, and what looked like ledgers. Dominic pulled everything out, spread it across the desk, started photographing pages with his phone. What is this? He muttered, scanning a ledger. Payments to... These are bribes. Judges, officials, inspectors. I told you, her mother said quietly. Things he doesn't want anyone to see. This is enough to... Dominic stopped, reading something that made his expression darken. When did your husband start working with the Kellerman Group? About 3 years ago. Why? Because the Kellerman Group is under federal investigation for money laundering. If Richard's tied up with them... He photographed more pages, working quickly. This changes everything. Well, what do you mean? Alara asked. I mean your father's in deeper trouble than I thought. This isn't just business dealings gone bad. This is criminal activity. He looked at her mother. Did you know about any of this? I knew he was worried, taking calls at odd hours, meetings he wouldn't talk about, but I didn't know specifics. You know now. Dominic finished photographing, started putting everything back. And you have a choice to make. Stay here and pretend you don't know, or get out before it all collapses. Where would I go? I'll set you up, an apartment, an account with enough money to live on. But you leave today, right now, pack a bag, and walk out. Her mother looked around the study, at the life she'd built here. The expensive furniture, the careful appearances, the security of being Mrs. Richard Voss. I can't, she said finally. This is my home. It's a prison, Alara said, and he's the warden. How can you choose this? Because it's what I know. Her mother's voice was defeated, small. I'm 53 years old. I don't know how to be anyone else. Then you deserve what happens next. The words came out harsher than Alara intended, but she couldn't take them back. Didn't want to. They left her standing in the study, surrounded by her husband's secrets and her own choices. Dominic guided Alara back to the car, his hand firm on her back. I'm sorry, he said once they were driving. I know that was hard. She chose him, over me, again. Some people are too broken to be fixed, too scared to change. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, it's just the truth. He glanced at her. But we got what we needed. Those documents are going to bury your father. What are you going to do with them? Depends on what he does next. If he backs off, leaves you alone, I'll sit on them. Insurance policy. He turned onto the highway. But if he keeps pushing, if he threatens you again, I'll turn everything over to the feds and let them tear him apart. The ruthlessness of it should have shocked her. Instead, she felt oddly calm. You'd really destroy him. Without hesitation. Why? What do you get out of it? He was quiet for a long moment. Peace of mind. Knowing you're safe. That's it? That's enough. They drove in silence for a while. Elara watched the city pass by outside the window, thinking about her mother's face when she refused to leave. Thinking about the safe full of secrets. Thinking about what it meant that Dominic was willing to burn her father's life down just to keep her safe. I saw Dr. Chen again yesterday, she said abruptly, while you were working. How's that going? Hard. She keeps asking me about things I'd rather not talk about. That's kind of the point of therapy. I know. It's just... She struggled to find words. It's easier to not think about it, to pretend it didn't happen. But it did happen, and pretending won't make it go away. You sound like her. She sounds smart. Elara almost smiled. She wants to do EMDR, something about processing trauma through eye movements. It sounds weird. If it helps, it helps. Do whatever she suggests. Even if it means falling apart? Especially then. Sometimes you have to break before you can rebuild. She looked at him. Is that what you did? After your parents died? I worked myself half to death instead. Built an empire to avoid dealing with grief. He shrugged. Not recommended. Therapy's probably better. But you never did it. No, I should have. Maybe if I had, I'd be better at this. At what? At being a person instead of just a businessman. At knowing what to say when someone's hurting instead of just trying to fix everything with money and power. The admission surprised her. You're doing okay. I'm doing what I know how to do, solving problems, eliminating threats, but that's not the same as actually helping you heal. It helps more than you think, knowing someone's on my side. I'm always on your side. He said it like a fact, immutable and certain. That's not going to change. Back at the house, Dominic went straight to his office to organize the photos he'd taken. Elara wandered to the library, too restless to settle. She pulled out random books, read a few pages, put them back. Nothing held her attention. Margaret found her there around 3. Mr. Hale said to tell you he'll be working late. There's dinner in the fridge if you get hungry. Thanks. You all right, dear? You seem upset. Just a long day. Margaret nodded, didn't push. Well, I'm heading out. Call if you need anything. After she left, the house felt too big, too quiet. Elara paced through rooms she barely knew, feeling like a ghost haunting someone else's life. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. You went to my house, her father's voice vibrating with rage. You went through my things. Ice flooded her veins. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Your mother called, said you and that husband of yours were in my study. What did you take? Nothing. We just talked to her. Talked. Right. He laughed, sharp and bitter. You think you're clever. Think you can turn my own wife against me. But you're still that scared little girl who needs to be taught lessons. I'm not scared of you anymore. You should be, because Dominic Hale can't watch you every second. And when he's not looking, when you're alone, that's when I'll remind you who you really belong to. The line went dead. Elara stood frozen, her father's threats echoing in her head. She should tell Dominic, should show him this was escalating. But he was working, dealing with everything he'd found in the safe, and she didn't want to interrupt. Didn't want to be the scared little girl running for help. She went to her room instead, locked the door, sat on the bed with her knees pulled up. Her phone sat in her hand, heavy with the weight of 2 threatening calls in one day. This was why you didn't fight back. This was why you stayed quiet and small and obedient. Because fighting only made them angrier, only made the punishment worse. But then she thought about Dominic at the gala, stepping between her and her father. Thought about him in the study this morning, gathering evidence like he was building a case. Thought about the way he'd promised, repeatedly, certainly, that her father wouldn't hurt her again. She unlocked her phone and texted him. He called again, more threats. The response came back immediately, coming now. 2 minutes later, Dominic was at her door. She let him in and handed over the phone without being asked. He listened to something, must have checked her voicemail log, and his expression went cold and hard. That's it, he said. I'm done playing nice. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the start. He made a call. It's Hale. I need you to deliver a package to Richard Voss. Yes, tonight. The documents I scanned earlier, plus a letter I'm about to write. He paused, listening. No, I want it hand-delivered to his home. I want him to get it tonight while he's still feeling bold. He hung up and pulled out his laptop, started typing. What are you writing? Elara asked. A very simple message. Stop contacting my wife, or I turn all of this over to the federal authorities. No negotiation, no discussion, just stop. He won't stop. You know he won't. Then he'll go to prison. Dominic kept typing, his fingers sharp against the keys. And either way, he'll be out of your life. What if he tries to hurt me before that happens? He stopped typing, looked at her. Then I'll kill him. The statement hung in the air, flat and certain and completely serious. You don't mean that, she said. I absolutely mean that. If he lays a hand on you, if he even gets close enough to try, I will end him. He went back to typing. I've spent 20 years building power, time to use it for something that matters. She wanted to argue, wanted to say that violence wasn't the answer, that there had to be another way. But she'd grown up in a world where power was the only language anyone spoke, where the strong did what they wanted and the weak endured. And for the first time in her life, she was on the strong side. I don't want you to go to prison for me, she said quietly. I won't. I'm very good at making problems disappear without consequences. He hit a few final keys, turned the laptop around. Read this. Make sure I'm not missing anything. The letter was concise, brutal in its clarity. A list of her father's crimes based on the documents they'd found, followed by a simple ultimatum. Leave Elara alone or face federal prosecution. No threats, no drama. Just facts and consequences. It's good, she said. Good. He sent it to print somewhere in the house, stood. This ends tonight, one way or another. He left to arrange the delivery. Elara stayed in her room, trying to process everything that had happened. Her mother's refusal to help, the safe full of incriminating evidence, her father's escalating threats, Dominic's promise to kill for her. She should have been horrified by that, should have been scared of what he was capable of. Instead, she felt oddly protected, like someone had finally put themselves between her and the monsters. Around 8, Dominic came back. It's done. The package is being delivered as we speak. And now? Now we wait. See if he's smart enough to back down or stupid enough to push harder. They didn't have to wait long. Her father called Dominic's phone at 9:15. Dominic put it on speaker. You think you can threaten me? Her father's voice was shaking with rage. You think some photocopied documents scare me? They should, Dominic said calmly. That's enough evidence to put you away for 15 to 20 years. Bribery, fraud, money laundering, the feds would love this. You're bluffing. You turn me in, you lose the business connections, the merger falls apart. You lose everything you married her for. I don't care. The certainty in those 3 words clearly threw her father off balance. There was a pause, then, You're insane. I'm protective. There's a difference. Dominic's voice stayed level, controlled. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Elara alone. No calls, no visits, no contact of any kind. You're going to forget she exists. She's my daughter. She's my wife. And you sold her to me, remember? You don't get to change the terms now. He paused. If you contact her again, if you even think about her too hard, I turn everything over to the FBI. Your choice. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. Dominic hung up. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Elara said, He's going to retaliate, find some way to hurt us. Let him try. I'm ready. Are you? Because he's spent 20 years learning how to hurt people without getting caught. He's good at it. So am I. Dominic looked at her. The difference is I have resources he doesn't. Money, connections, people who owe me favors. If he comes at us, I'll see it coming. And if you don't, then I'll deal with it when it happens. But I'm not letting fear dictate our lives. That's what he wants, to keep you scared, keep you looking over your shoulder. I won't give him that. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that his power and confidence were enough to keep them safe. But fear was a hard habit to break. That night she couldn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like a threat. She finally gave up around 2 in the morning and went downstairs to make tea. She found Dominic in his office, still awake, surrounded by documents. "Can't sleep either?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, rubbed his eyes. "Too much to do." "It's 2 in the morning. Whatever it is can wait." "Not really. I'm going through every contract, every agreement I have with your father's company, looking for ways to cut ties completely." "Why?" "Because I meant what I said. I don't care about the business connections anymore. I care about making sure he can never use them as leverage." She came into the room, sat in the chair across from his desk. "You're really willing to lose all that? The merger, the political connections, everything you married me for?" "I didn't marry you for those things." "Yes, you did. You said so yourself." "I said that's what the deal was supposed to be. Doesn't mean that's what I want now." He set down the papers he'd been reading. "Things change. People change. You've known me less than 3 weeks. Long enough to know I don't want to be the kind of man who trades a woman's safety for business advantages." He leaned back. "My father used to say that how you treat people when you have power over them defines who you really are. I never understood that until now." "What changed?" "I saw those scars on your back and realized I had a choice. Be the man your father expected, use you, ignore what came before, take what I wanted, or be something different." He met her eyes. "I chose different." "Why?" "Because the first option made me feel sick, and because somewhere in the past 20 years of building this empire, I forgot what it was all for." He gestured around the office. "All this power, all this money. What's the point if I use it the same way men like your father do?" She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the idea that someone might actually choose her well-being over their own interests. "Come here," he said quietly. She stood, came around the desk. He pulled her down to sit on the edge of it, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I need you to understand something," he said. "This isn't about heroics or redemption or whatever story you're telling yourself. It's simpler than that. You're my wife. That means something to me, even if it doesn't mean anything to you yet. It means I protect you. It means your father doesn't get to hurt you anymore. It means I do whatever's necessary to make sure you're safe. Even if it costs you everything?" Even then. The certainty in his voice was absolute, unshakable. She wanted to question it, to poke holes in it, to find the cracks where doubt could seep in. But sitting there in his office at 2 in the morning, exhausted and scared and more honest than usual, she couldn't find any. "I don't know how to trust that," she admitted. "I know, but you'll learn." He stood, stretched. "Come on, we both need sleep. Tomorrow we start the process of untangling everything from your father's business. It's going to be messy." "How messy?" "Very, but necessary." They walked upstairs together, stopped outside her door. "Thank you," she said. "For tonight, for all of it. Stop thanking me for basic decency. It's not basic when you've never had it before." Something crossed his face. Anger, maybe, or sadness. "Then the world's more broken than I thought." He squeezed her shoulder briefly, carefully. "Sleep. We'll deal with the rest tomorrow." She watched him walk down the hall to his own room, waited until his door closed before going into hers. The bed felt too big, too empty. She lay there staring at the ceiling and thought about what Dr. Chen had said in their last session, that healing meant learning to trust again, even when trust had been weaponized against you. She wasn't there yet, might never be there. But tonight, for the first time, she could see a path forward, narrow and uncertain, and probably full of obstacles. But there. She fell asleep still thinking about it. 3 weeks of silence followed. No calls from her father. No threats. No contact. Nothing. Alara kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to find some new way to reach her. But the days passed quietly, settling into a rhythm she didn't quite trust. Dominic worked from home most days, always within earshot. She knew it was intentional, knew he was positioning himself as a barrier between her and any potential threat. Part of her resented the implied fragility. The rest of her was grateful. Dr. Chen came twice a week. They'd started the EMDR therapy, which was exactly as strange as it sounded. Following lights with her eyes while talking about trauma, her brain somehow processing things it had buried for years. Alara hated it, but it was working. "Tell me about the last time he hit you," Dr. Chen said during their 8th session. They were in the garden again, Alara's preferred location. Something about being outside made the memories easier to access, like the sky gave her room to breathe. "2 weeks before the wedding," Alara said, "I asked if I could finish my degree first, delay the marriage by a semester. What did he say?" "Nothing at first, just looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Then he told me to go to his study." She picked at a thread on her sleeve. "I knew what that meant, what always happened in his study." "Did you go?" "Of course I went. You didn't refuse him, ever." Dr. Chen nodded, writing something down. "What happened in the study?" "The usual. Told me I was ungrateful, that he'd given me everything and I repaid him with disrespect, that I needed to be reminded of my place." The words came out flat, emotionless, like she was describing something that happened to someone else. "Then he made me take off my shirt and bend over the desk." "How many times did he hit you?" "I don't remember. 10? 15? I stopped counting after a while." She looked at the flowers, their bright colors somehow obscene against the dark of the memory. The wedding dress had to be altered because the scars were still raised. The seamstress asked if I was allergic to something. I told her I'd fallen into a rose bush. "Do you think she believed you?" "No, but she pretended to. Everyone always pretended." They sat in silence for a moment. A bird landed nearby, hopped along the path, flew away. "How do you feel about that memory now?" Dr. Chen asked. "Not then. Now." Alara considered. "Angry. Not scared anymore, just angry. That's progress." "Is it? Because I still have the scars, still flinch when someone moves too fast, still apologize for everything." "You're apologizing less," Dr. Chen pointed out. "I've noticed, and you're sleeping better." That was true. The nightmares had decreased from nightly to a few times a week. Small victory, but a victory nonetheless. "What about your relationship with Dominic?" Dr. Chen asked. "How's that developing?" "I don't know. We eat dinner together. Talk about nothing important. He works," I read. "It's very domestic and very strange." "Strange how?" "Because it's not what I expected. He doesn't demand anything from me. Doesn't try to..." She stopped, searched for words. "He just exists in the same space and lets me figure things out." "And that bothers you?" "It confuses me. I keep waiting for the real version to show up, the one who wants something in return for all this protection." "What if this is the real version?" Alara didn't have an answer for that. That night at dinner, Dominic seemed distracted. He pushed food around his plate, barely eating, his attention somewhere else. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Your father's company filed for bankruptcy protection this morning." She set down her fork. "What?" "I pulled my backing 2 weeks ago, cut every connection, called in the debts. Without that support, the whole thing collapsed." He looked at her. "I thought you should know." "You destroyed his company." "I removed my involvement. The destruction was already there, just waiting to happen. I just accelerated the timeline." She tried to process what this meant. Her father's business had been his entire identity, the source of his power and influence. Without it, he was nothing. "How did he react?" she asked. "Haven't heard, but I'm guessing not well." Dominic finally took a bite of food. "I have people watching him, making sure he doesn't do anything stupid." "Like what?" "Like coming here. Like trying to hurt you out of spite." The casualness with which he discussed it should have alarmed her. Instead, she felt oddly calm. "You really think he'd try?" "I think wounded animals are dangerous. And your father just lost everything that mattered to him." He met her eyes. "So yes, I think he might try. Which is why we're being careful." "We." You keep saying we. Because it's not just me anymore. It's both of us. She wanted to argue, to point out that this was his decision, his war. But sitting across from him in the kitchen where they'd shared dozens of meals, she couldn't quite muster the energy for that particular fight. "What happens now?" she asked instead. "Now we wait. See if he accepts defeat or tries one last desperate move." He pushed his plate away. "Either way, it ends soon." It ended 3 days later. Alara was in the library when she heard shouting from downstairs. Male voices, angry and overlapping. She recognized one immediately, her father's, loud and slurring slightly. He was drunk, and he was in the house. She froze, every instinct screaming at her to hide, to find somewhere small and safe and out of reach. But before she could move, Dominic appeared in the doorway. "Stay here," he said. "Not a request. What's happening?" "Your father showed up at the gate, talked his way past security somehow." His expression was cold, controlled. "I'm handling it." You should stay here. Lock the door after me. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe." He left before she could argue. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard him call out something she couldn't make out. Then her father's voice, louder now, closer. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" "Not your concern anymore." Dominic's voice, calm and firm. "She's my blood. You can't keep her from me." "I can and I am. You need to leave." "Like hell I do. I want to see her, want to talk to her." Alara crept to the library door, pressed her ear against it. She could hear them more clearly now, their voices echoing up from the foyer. "There's nothing to talk about," Dominic said. "You threatened her, tried to intimidate her. That ends now." "You ruined me!" Her father's voice cracked with rage. "Took everything I built, everything I worked for, because of her." "No, because of you. Your choices, your crimes, your abuse. This is on you." "I gave her everything, fed her, clothed her, gave her a good home. And this is how she repays me? By turning you against me?" "She didn't turn me against you. You did that yourself the first time you laid hands on her." Silence. Then her father's voice, quieter but more dangerous. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've seen the scars, Richard, counted them. 20 years worth of your parenting carved into her back. That was discipline. She needed a father who didn't beat her bloody for asking questions. She needed parents who protected her instead of using her as a punching bag." Dominic's voice had gone hard, sharp. "But she didn't get that. She got you. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're better than me? You bought her like cattle. At least I'm her father." "Being her father doesn't give you the right to hurt her, doesn't give you any rights at all anymore." Alara heard movement, scuffling. Her father's voice came out strained. "Get your hands off me. I'm escorting you out. You're not welcome here. I'll go to the press. Tell them everything. About the marriage, about you threatening me, about those documents you stole. Go ahead. I have copies of everything from your safe. Let's see whose story holds up better. Mine with evidence of your crimes, or yours with nothing but spite." More scuffling. Her father shouted something incomprehensible. Then Dominic's voice, closer to the stairs. "I'm calling the police. You have 60 seconds to leave voluntarily, or I have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it." A door slammed. Silence. Alara waited, barely breathing. Then Dominic called up the stairs. "He's gone. You can come out." She opened the door on shaking legs. Dominic stood at the bottom of the stairs, his shirt disheveled, a red mark on his cheek that would probably bruise. "Did he hit you?" she asked, coming down slowly. "Tried. I blocked most of it." He touched his cheek, winced. "He's not as strong as he used to be. Or I'm stronger. One of the two. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Are you?" She nodded, then shook her head. "I heard everything, what you said to him. I meant it, all of it. I know." She reached the bottom step, stood there looking at him. "He's going to tell people. About the marriage, about everything. Let him. I don't care what people think. Your reputation, my reputation can survive the truth. Can his?" He straightened his shirt, trying to restore order. "Besides, if he goes public with his version, I'll go public with mine. Let's see how society feels about a man who beat his daughter for 20 years. They won't believe it. Men like him don't face consequences. They do when there's evidence, when there are medical records and witness statements and a paper trail a mile long." He looked at her. "I've been gathering documentation, talking to your childhood doctors, your teachers, anyone who might have seen something, building a case. For what? For whatever comes next. If he pushes this, I push back harder. If he tries to hurt you again, I make sure everyone knows exactly who he is." She sat down on the bottom step, suddenly exhausted. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because someone should have done it years ago." He sat beside her, not too close. "Because you deserve better than what you got." "Because I can." "That's not a good enough reason." "It's the only one I have." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Alara said, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I'm scared. Not of him anymore, but of this. Of trusting you. Of believing this is real." She looked at her hands. "Every time I start to think maybe it's okay, maybe I'm safe, part of me waits for it to fall apart." "That's normal. That's trauma." "I know. Dr. Chen says the same thing, but knowing it doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't." He stood, offered her his hand. "But we keep working on it anyway. That's how healing works. You do it even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She took his hand, let him pull her up. His palm was warm, solid, real. "I filed for a permanent restraining order this afternoon," he said. "Your father can't come within 500 feet of you or this property. If he violates it, he goes to jail. He won't respect that. Then he'll face consequences. Real ones this time." She wanted to believe that. Wanted to trust that pieces of paper could keep her safe where nothing else had. But belief was hard when you'd spent 20 years learning that rules didn't apply to powerful men. Over the next few weeks, Alara watched her father's world crumble from a distance. The bankruptcy was public, messy, covered in the business pages. His associates distanced themselves. His club memberships were quietly revoked. The Kellerman Group investigation expanded to include his involvement, federal agents combing through everything. Her mother called once. Alara almost didn't answer. "Hello?" "It's your mother." A pause. "I just wanted you to know I'm leaving him." Alara sat down, shocked. "What?" "I'm leaving. Filing for divorce. Taking what's left and starting over." Her mother's voice was strained but determined. "You were right. About all of it. This was a prison. I just couldn't see it until there were no more bars to hide behind." "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere he'll never think to look." A shaky breath. "I should have done this years ago. Should have protected you. I'm sorry I didn't." "I don't know what to say to that." "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know." Another pause. "And I wanted to tell you I'm proud of you for getting out, for surviving, for being stronger than I was." Alara's throat closed up. "Mom, take care of yourself, sweetheart. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you, even when I was too weak to make it happen." The line went dead. Alara sat there holding the phone, tears streaming down her face. Not sad tears exactly, just tears. Release, maybe, or grief for what could have been. Dominic found her like that 20 minutes later. "What happened?" he asked, sitting beside her on the couch. She told him about the call, about her mother leaving, the apology, the goodbye. "How do you feel about that?" he asked when she finished. "I don't know. Relieved? Sad? Both?" She wiped her eyes. "Is that normal?" "Completely normal. She's your mother. You're allowed to have complicated feelings." "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything." He handed her a tissue from the box on the side table. "Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel fine, some days you'll fall apart. That's okay." "You sound like Dr. Chen." "She's been giving me reading material, trauma recovery, supporting survivors, all that." Shrugged. "Figured I should know what I'm doing." The image of Dominic Hale reading self-help books about trauma was so incongruous she almost laughed. "You're really trying." "Of course I am. You're my wife." "That's not enough of a reason." "Then how about this? I care about you as a person, not as a transaction or obligation. I want you to heal and be happy and have the life you should have had from the start." He met her eyes. "Is that a good enough reason?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Good. Now come on, we're going out." "Where?" "You'll see." He drove them to a building downtown she didn't recognize, took her up to the 5th floor, unlocked a door to an empty office space. "What is this?" she asked. "Your space, if you want it." He gestured around the room. Good light, nice view, totally blank. "You said you wanted to finish your degree. This can be your office, or your studio, or whatever you want. I'll have it set up however you need." She walked through the space, touching walls, looking out windows. Why? Because you're 20 years old and you should have options. Should have a life beyond being Mrs. Dominic Hale. He leaned against the doorframe. "I'm not trying to keep you. I'm trying to give you choices. What if I choose to leave?" "Then you leave. I'm not your jailer." "But the marriage is legal paperwork. Important, sure, but it doesn't have to be a cage." He pushed off the frame, came to stand beside her at the window. "Look, I know this started as a transaction. Your father needed money. I needed connections. But that's not what I want it to be anymore." "What do you want it to be?" "Partnership. Real partnership. Two people who chose each other instead of being forced together." He paused. "But that only works if you have the freedom to choose, to stay or go, to build a life here or somewhere else. Your choice." She looked at him, this complicated man who'd stepped between her and her father, who'd destroyed business deals to keep her safe, who was offering her freedom when he could have demanded obedience. "I don't know if I can trust that yet," she said honestly. "I know, but maybe someday." He pulled an envelope from his pocket, handed it to her. "Open this when you're ready. No rush." "What is it?" "Options." He left her there to explore the space. She opened the envelope eventually, found legal documents. An annulment agreement, already drawn up, requiring only her signature. Bank account information showing money in her name, enough to live on for years. Documents establishing her as financially independent from both her father and Dominic. Freedom, literally, in her hands. She sat on the floor of the empty office and cried. Not sad tears this time. Something else. Relief, maybe. Or possibility. That night she found Dominic in his study. "I read the papers," she said. He looked up from his laptop. "And?" "I'm not signing them. Not yet." "Okay. That's it? Just okay?" "What do you want me to say? That I'm glad?" "I am." "That I want you to stay?" "I do. But it has to be your choice." He closed the laptop. "The papers will be there whenever you're ready. No pressure, no timeline." She came into the room, sat across from him. "I need you to understand something." "What?" "I'm broken, probably for a long time, maybe forever. I'm going to have bad days and worse days. I'm going to flinch and apologize and fall apart." She met his eyes. "If you're expecting me to just get better, to become this perfect wife who has it all together, that's not happening. I don't expect that." "You say that now. I expect you to heal at your own pace, to have setbacks and breakthroughs and everything in between, to be human." He leaned forward. "I don't want perfect, Alara. I want real." "Why?" "Because perfect is boring, because real is worth fighting for, because you're worth fighting for." She wanted to argue, to list all the reasons she wasn't worth the effort. But sitting there in his study, looking at this man who'd somehow become her unlikely defender, she couldn't quite manage it. "I want to try," she said instead, "to make this work. Whatever this is." "Good. So do I. But I need time and space and patience when I mess up. You'll have it, all of it. And I need honesty. No more secrets, no more protecting me from things you think I can't handle. Deal. Same goes both ways." She stood, crossed to his desk, held out her hand. "Partners?" He took it, shook once. "Partners." 6 months passed. Alara enrolled in online classes to finish her degree. Used the office space Dominic had given her to study, filling the empty room with books and notes, and a life that was finally hers. She saw Dr. Chen weekly, working through layers of trauma that seemed bottomless some days. Her father was indicted on multiple counts of fraud and bribery. The trial was scheduled for the following spring. Alara would have to testify, would have to face him in court and tell her story publicly. The thought terrified her. But Dr. Chen was helping her prepare, and Dominic promised to be there every step of the way. Her mother moved to Vermont, sent occasional emails that Alara sometimes answered. They weren't close, might never be close, but there was a fragile peace between them. Better than nothing. And Dominic. Dominic became something unexpected, not just a protector or a husband on paper, but a friend, someone she could talk to about the meaningless and the meaningful, who made her laugh and challenged her thinking and gave her space when she needed it. One night in late autumn, they were having dinner, a ritual they'd maintained through everything, when he said, "I have something for you." "What?" He pulled out a small box, slid it across the table. She opened it, found a key inside. "What's this?" "The house. Your name's on the deed now, too. Joint ownership." He took a drink of wine. "Figured it was time you had equity in this place you've been living." "Dominic, don't argue. It's done. The lawyers finalized it this afternoon." She held the key, feeling its weight. "Why?" "Because I told you 6 months ago I wanted this to be a partnership. That means shared assets, shared decisions, shared everything." He paused. "Plus, if something happens to me, I want to know you're taken care of." "Nothing's going to happen to you." "Probably not. But I'm 43 and I work too much and my stress levels are terrible. Actuarially speaking, it's smart planning." She smiled despite herself. "Actuarially speaking, I'm nothing if not practical." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Alara said, "I have something for you too." "What?" She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket, slid it across the table. He unfolded it, read, looked up at her. "This is the annulment agreement." "I know." "You tore it up." "I did." She met his eyes. "I'm choosing to stay. Not because I have to, not because I'm scared to leave, because I want to." Something crossed his face, surprise, relief, something softer she couldn't quite name. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "No, I'm still scared most days, still working through things, still don't completely trust that this is real." She paused. "But I'm choosing to stay anyway, choosing to believe that maybe, eventually, I'll get there. That's enough, more than enough." "Is it?" "Because I still can't, we haven't, I know, and that's fine. We'll get there when we get there. If we get there." He reached across the table, took her hand. "No pressure, no timeline, just us, figuring this out together." She laced her fingers through his, the touch still strange, but less frightening than it used to be. "Partners." "Partners," he agreed. That night, for the first time since the wedding, Alara went to Dominic's room instead of her own. Not for anything physical, just to not be alone. He was reading in bed when she knocked. "Can I stay here tonight?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. "Of course. Want me to take the couch?" "No, I don't want to be alone, but I also don't want—" "I understand. Come here." She climbed into bed on the opposite side, maintaining space between them. He went back to reading, giving her room to settle. Eventually, she fell asleep to the sound of turning pages and his quiet breathing. She woke once in the night, disoriented. Dominic was asleep beside her, one arm thrown over his head, peaceful in a way he never was when awake. She watched him for a moment, this man who'd become her unlikely safe harbor. Then she turned over and went back to sleep. Spring came. The trial started. Alara testified for 6 hours over 2 days, told the court about the beatings, the scars, the years of calculated abuse hidden behind wealth and social standing. Her father sat at the defense table, staring at her with cold fury the entire time. She didn't look away, didn't apologize, just told the truth. Dominic sat in the gallery, exactly where he'd promised to be. Every time she faltered, she found his face in the crowd and remembered she wasn't that scared girl anymore. The verdict came back guilty on all counts. Her father was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. Alara had prepared a statement, short, direct, final. "For 20 years I lived in fear of my father. Today, that fear ends. I'm not his victim anymore. I'm a survivor. And I'm done hiding." She pulled down the collar of her dress, turning slightly, letting the cameras see the scars on her back. The ones she'd hidden for so long, the evidence of what had been done to her. Dominic stood beside her, his hand steady on her shoulder. The photos ran in every major newspaper the next day. Alara's scars, her father's crimes. The truth finally exposed to the world. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support, stories from other survivors, calls for systemic change. It wasn't everything, wouldn't fix everything, but it was something. 3 weeks after the trial, Dominic came home with flowers. "What are these for?" Alara asked, taking them. "Anniversary. 1 year since we got married. She'd forgotten entirely. A year. It felt both longer and shorter than that. I can't believe it's been a year. A very strange year, he agreed. But we made it. We did. She found a vase, started arranging the flowers. You know what's weird? What? I can't remember what I thought my life would be like before all this. She adjusted a stem. I knew I'd get married eventually, knew my father would arrange it, but I never thought past that, never imagined what came after. And now? Now I can't imagine going back, being that scared girl who just survived. She looked at him. I'm not sure who I am yet, but I know who I'm not anymore. That's progress. It is, isn't it? She finished with the flowers, stepped back to admire them. Dr. Chen says I'm ready to reduce our sessions to once a month. How do you feel about that? Terrified. But ready. She turned to face him fully. I think I'm ready for a lot of things. He understood immediately. Are you sure? No, but I want to try. He crossed the kitchen slowly, giving her time to change her mind. When he reached her, he cupped her face gently, searching her eyes. Tell me if you want to stop, he said quietly. Any time, for any reason. I mean it. I know. He kissed her then, soft and careful, and nothing like their wedding kiss. This one was a question, not a demand, an offering, not a taking. She kissed him back. They didn't make it to the bedroom that night, didn't rush toward anything, just stood in the kitchen kissing like teenagers, learning each other slowly, carefully, with patience born of hard-won trust. Later, wrapped in each other on the couch, Ilara said, I love you. The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. You don't have to say that, he said carefully. I know, but I think I do. Love you, I mean. She looked up at him. Not the way they show in movies. It's messier than that, scarier, but it's real. Yeah? Yeah. She settled against his chest. Is that okay? More than okay. He pressed a kiss to her hair. I love you too. Have for a while now. Since when? Since you tore up the annulment papers. Maybe before. He tightened his arms around her. You're the bravest person I know. I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being afraid. Same thing sometimes. They stayed like that until late, talking about nothing and everything. About the future they were building together, the life they were choosing instead of enduring, about healing and trust and learning to believe in good things again. It wasn't perfect. Ilara still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched at unexpected movements, still carried scars that would never fully fade. Dominic still worked too much, still defaulted to control when he was stressed, still struggled with expressing emotions he'd buried for 20 years. But they were trying, both of them, together, building something neither had expected, but both had learned to value. 2 years later, Ilara graduated with her degree. Dominic sat in the audience with Margaret and Dr. Chen, cheering louder than anyone when her name was called. At the celebration dinner afterward, Ilara raised her glass. A toast. To second chances and new beginnings. To choosing yourself even when it's hard. To the people who stand beside you when you're too broken to stand alone. To partnership, Dominic added, clinking his glass against hers. To partnership, she echoed. They drank, and in that moment, Ilara realized something had shifted. The fear that had followed her for so long had finally loosened its grip. Not gone entirely, maybe it never would be, but manageable, bearable. She was free. Not because someone had rescued her, though Dominic had certainly helped, but because she'd chosen freedom, fought for it, refused to let her past define her future. She caught Dominic's eye across the table, saw pride and love and something like wonder in his expression, saw herself reflected in his gaze, not a victim, not a transaction, but a partner, an equal. Someone who'd survived and was finally, truly learning to live. The scars on her back would always be there, but they were proof now, not shame. Evidence that she'd endured the unendurable and come out the other side. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.